Thank
So we're redoing everything?
We are starting from the top because Sully decided to barge in on our last one.
Okay. Mm.
Hello, everyone. This is, and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Noelle on Course Readings. Today, very super excited to have my very, very talented and wonderful Uncle Mike on the phone with us. On the phone, I guess. Virtual phone, right. He is going to give a little background for himself. So I leave it up to you, Uncle Mike. Take it away.
Okay, I will try and be brief. You know my story. Thank you, Noelle. But okay, real quickly, graduated from Tulane University with a degree in architecture, and also was active in the ROTC program, following in my dad's footsteps. To pursue a career in the Air Force. So got the technical degree. I love that world, but knew that sitting behind an architecture, a drafting desk is not really what I wanted to do for my life. So went on active duty, graduated, went on active duty in the Air Force as a civil engineering officer. Started out at MacDill Air Force Base right there in Tampa. Very quickly, it's where where your Aunt Shelley and I got to develop our relationship and get married soon after graduation. And then not too long, not even 2 years in, we were transferred to Germany. So we had lived in Germany for 4.5 wonderful years as a young married couple. It was just awesome opportunity. From there, left Germany, went to graduate school with the Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Then from there out to Phoenix, Arizona, where we were about another 4 years, and that's where we welcomed the first two of our kids, Brian and Drew. After about 11 years on total time on active duty, I started getting the itch for a civilian career. Left active duty Air Force, relocated to Raleigh, North Carolina, where honestly just got the best job offer. We had no connections here to Raleigh, as you know, but we settled here in Raleigh and have been here ever since. So about a couple years after being a civilian, I realized that I missed a big part of the Air Force military life, and so good friend referral, I ended up getting back in and joining the Air National Guard. So again, truly following in my dad's footsteps as a career guardsman. So I had that parallel career for 20 some odd years, where on the civilian side, I was working consulting engineering companies, 3 different companies over a period of a good number of years, and then also, mirroring and having a career in the military. So pursuing to continue my career in the Guard as a civil engineering officer. So bounced around between the Maryland Air National Guard, then transferred to the North Carolina Air National Guard, where I started a new civil engineering unit. And fast forward. Was very fortunate and blessed to work with some great people, great deployments all around the world, and hung up my military hat in 2016, basically retiring from military service with just short of 32 years of military service, and retired as a colonel. So that was good. Still maintaining my civilian career. 2011-ish, I guess, was the last big recession time frame. I had just kind of tapped out from the engineering. I just was burned out with working in consulting engineering. Left that. Was still in the military at the time. Had the opportunity to throw the uniform back on for almost a year and kind of help out with a big project down at Fort Bragg, Pope Air Force Base. So that was a little bit of a commute, but it was very fun and rewarding. All good. While I was doing that, a mutual friend introduced me to a gentleman who was part of the Manpower Group, and was looking to establish a dedicated engineering services business as part of the Manpower Group portfolio, which is basically staffing, professional resourcing, but really kind of looking at dedicated towards engineering. So made the leap of faith, joined the division called Experis, which is part of the Manpower Group, the professional services arm, and really helped over the last almost 9 years now have been working with Manpower Group to build out the engineering vertical, which now covers basically the Eastern U.S. across nine different offices from Chicago to Houston to Orlando and all points in between. So that's kind of there's the story of me and kind of how I got here. Never envisioned, as a young kid, aspiring to go off and go to architecture school and change the world, that I would end up, as a managing director in a staffing company. But boy, it's been an interesting ride, obviously, with, 30 years of parallel, or like 20 some years of a parallel track, civilian and military, career. But it's been a heck of a ride, and wouldn't trade a day of it for anything.
That is awesome. And let me ask probably a pretty silly question to most people, but is staffing the same as recruiting?
So recruiting is the side of staffing is really the industry, right? So
okay.
Staffing is the industry where we are providing, talent. We have a team of recruiters that are really kind of reaching out on the talent side. I run a sales and delivery organization. If delivery is the recruiting piece, right? The people that are, engaging and talking to, folks honestly like you and I every day. Are you looking for a job? What about this? What about that? Right? The potential employee. And my sales folks are obviously engaged in working with clients. Who has the need, right? The companies that, for whatever reason, they need to hire people. From my world is specifically engineering talent, right? They need engineering talent to maintain or accelerate their business and their business growth. So we provide that connection.
Awesome. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miswrite some of my questions by saying recruiting. Okay, so great. So this week's readings, I know I gave you a little offline background on how we have to curate these questions. I'm going to ask a few that go towards your job now and some towards your military background, but please feel free to throw in any thoughts either which way. And I have
wallet, and we'll be in good shape.
Perfect. A little more context. I did provide these very lengthy questions to Uncle Mike prior to this because they're getting pretty in there. But please feel free to have me clarify anything. Okay. Question number 1. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Regarding an article titled "How to Keep Your Top Talent," the authors outlined 6 reasons why organizations have trouble maintaining top talent. So this is applicable to you. In your experience, which of these 6 reasons seem to be the most prevalent? Okay. Organizations' assumptions that top talent are highly engaged. Organizations' assumptions that current top talent performance will sustain into future potential. Organizations' delegation of management of the top talent to immediate managers, like lower-end managers. Organizations' coddling of the top talent against larger company issues or challenging opportunities. Organizations' assumptions that top talent will share the pain with the entire company. Or organizations' lack of involving top talent with larger corporate strategy.
Well, there's a question for you, huh? Yes. How about that for an answer, right?
All of the above, yes.
This was interesting, as I kind of alluded to, early before we got started here. Honestly, I kind of have a hard time connecting with almost any one of the 6, topics. The one thing that I think does resonate, with me and my experience is the last one, organizations' lack of involving top talent with larger corporate strategy. And I think, maybe worded a different way, it's just being engaged, right? As executive management, you want to be engaged in the organization. If you start to feel disconnected, then, that becomes, a reason for separation. So,
do you feel oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, that's all right. No, I was just going to say one of the things that I have certainly, always resonated, with me personally in managing the leaders on my team, right? As I said, I run a really large region. I've got, basically 6 area managers, and, they're very, very good, at what they do. And so it's the old, you end up spending a lot of your time from a management perspective, focusing on, different levels of talent, right? Who's struggling the most? If you say you got A talent, B talent, and C talent, right? You end up spending a lot of time with C talent trying to coach them up, and you just kind of leave the A talent alone, right? And huge mistake, right? It's the old A players need love too, right? And so that it's a little bit different than the question you're asking me, but I think it does factor right in with, you've got to maintain, for myself, I'm extremely fortunate right now. We've got some huge global initiatives going on, within Manpower Group. And when you look at the 20 plus billion-dollar organization across 80 different countries across the globe, I'm a bit player, but we've got some big things going on, and I've been asked to be a part of. It's really exciting. I've been up until COVID, popped up, I was, in Milwaukee, where our global corporate headquarters is, literally 3 days a week for like 6 weeks ongoing, working with this group of folks, really kind of defining what we are going to look like as a company, in a major part of our business, in 5, 10, 20 years, right? How do we remain relevant with everything that's going on? It's a whole new question now, right? This all started pre-COVID. I think it brings a whole nother perspective, but it's cool that we are, our senior leadership, my boss, our president of Manpower Group North America, and our CEO, very, very engaging people. They want to hear, they want to listen. I think that matters, from my perspective. So some of the other things that I think there's some, myriad things in there. The first one, right? Assuming that, top talent is highly engaged, that's a dangerous assumption. And that goes back to kind of the A players need love too, right? So I think that is a big need. And it really kind of, all that boils right back down to, people don't leave companies, they leave their bosses, right? I mean, that's just kind of a fundamental piece. So I'll shut up now.
No, you make all valid points. And all I was going to ask was, I wasn't even, when I formulated it, I wasn't even thinking for you in terms of you managing your top level team and being a part of that top level team. But you raise a really important point there about the fact that it is about being highly engaged. And I think all of these, regardless of whatever ones it is, always comes back to engagement, right? Certain people aren't engaging them, keeping your A players A, right? I love that. I think that was a great answer. Great job. Question 1 down. Next one. Are you ready?
Moving on.
Okay. In an article highlighting how providing incentives to all employees can benefit organizations in employee engagement and company profits, several suggestions were nominated as great examples. Of these incentives, what have you experienced as being the top 3 biggest motivators or incentives for candidates that are considering new opportunities? And here they are. I was actually going to specify real quick. So I know I wrote this for like candidates looking for positions, like thinking that you were closer in with the actual recruiting part of it.
Yeah.
So feel free to answer in that part or in terms of your direct team. So here are the great examples, if you will. Open book management, basically like the first question, everything's open. Every single person, no matter what level they're at, has full information flow to the entire corporate strategy. Not necessarily input, but they have access to all the information. Profit sharing, all expense paid trips, monetary incentives, non-monetary recognition, measurable success points, teamwork culture with significant autonomy for decision making, or open communication across all hierarchy. I guess one and the last one are pretty much the same, but of those, what would you say the 3 like most important ones would be in your experience?
So I'm gonna twist my answer a little bit, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Not to I don't know who the author was of that particular article, but not to question them. So already gave you the pitch, right? Manpower Group, we're a global company. So one of the things that we do routinely is we really kind of pride ourselves on what we call workforce insights, our thought leadership concept, right? What's going on in the world of work? Truly, what matters with people that are looking for jobs or looking for people? So it's really from both sides of the fence. So I can put the recruiter hat on, I can put the client advocate hat hat on, and we very proactively on an annual basis we do a talent demand survey, right, where it's actual interviews similar to this. But we talk to a lot of people. We've got full-time staff that do this as a job, basically. The think tank of Manpower Group. Right? It's really kind of cool. But fundamentally, we produce the results of these reports every year, and it's really, I find it very insightful, and it's kind of what I use when I go out to talk to clients. Right? Last thing I want to do is go out and say, hey, do you need an engineer? I can fill your roles. Right? That's passe and not the way. It's not why I got into this business, right? It's about truly helping people. So really understanding what matters, right? Seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? That whole concept. So the long babbling intro to what will hopefully be a real answer to your question. So, what we find, interestingly enough, I mean, pay is always important, but it's rarely number one. I think that's what's really, truly important. There are, and I'm aggregating a big thing, right? For someone, pay may be the most important thing right now, right? Especially right now. But
right, really.
If you're looking for a new opportunity, I've got, I need to make more money, and I need to make more money now. So oftentimes, that can cloud your judgment on accepting a role for monetary amounts as opposed to for the real reason you're maybe looking, right? So we try real hard to balance that. But pay is always, always an issue. It is what it is. But, people will, take pay cuts to go have the right kind of opportunity, right? To, advance. Personal example here, when I joined Manpower Group, it was, your Aunt Shelley thought I was crazy when I came home and told her I was taking a pay cut to go jump into this company. And what? Good luck with that. Right. Had the guard to rely on, so it all worked out fine. But again, it's that whole, do you take a step back to take a leap forward? That was certainly the case with me. So pay is one of those things. It's clearly not the first. Flexibility and opportunity for advancement. Those are the things that really, really resonate right now. I know we've got a question kind of coming up about the different generations, right? And it is unique because it morphs a little bit depending on the old the baby boomers of the world, right? Our motivations are kind of different than the Gen X's or the Gen Y's and the Gen Z's, right? It is what it is. Everybody's a little bit different, but opportunity for advancement is huge. I think it's probably in here in your, and I'm sorry, I'm not just specifically picking off your list. But I think opportunity for advancement is consistently ranked, right at the top about that. And then flexibility, right? It's interesting. I'm going to be really interested to see how our survey questions always remain the same, but the results change. It's going to be really interesting with people who have historically said, I want more flexibility. I'd like, all this, this, that, and the other. Now that we have a global workforce that's working from home, working remotely, the impact that that's going to have on our industries as a whole is huge, right? It's like, okay, we can't do that. Well, guess what? Companies are figuring it out. And it's going to be really interesting. Luckily I'm not in corporate real estate, but I kind of think about, wow, what are the impacts? All these huge, millions and millions and millions of square feet of office space that are dead empty, and companies are still operating, right? So what's going to happen? Are we all going to go back into the box, right, and be there, or what's going to change? So way off target from what you specifically.
No, it's not though. I'm actually going to circle back and kind of synthesize what you said into how I think that it would relate back to the options or the suggestions, right? And they were just suggestions, and by no means this is like an end all be all. But to me, I agree with you. And from our readings, money isn't everything. It's a lot, especially when it comes to reward systems, which is what this is more focusing on. Everybody loves pay. But to your point, things like flexibility, that to me is a non-monetary recognition, right? Awarding somebody the opportunity to work from home. Granted, in this current environment is not necessarily a job perk because we don't have a choice at this point, but in other points, actually, I just finished writing my final paper, and it's completely surrounding working from home and how people view that as a job perk. And I do think flexibility could be considered part of that. At the same time, to your point about job advancement, that to me would be measurable success points, right? Do this, get this, do this, get this, do this, get this. And so it all kind of works together. So I think you absolutely did answer the question just a little differently.
Well, thanks to your being able to synthesize my babbling.
That's why I'm in grad school. Woohoo! Which, for the record, total side note to everybody else, reason why I'm in this program is because I texted Uncle Mike one day. I'm like, so am I crazy? Or should I go back to grad school? Like, nobody's telling me I have to, but like, should I do it? And he's like, yeah, you should do it. It's only going to advance your career. So here we are. Very excited to be here. All right. Question number 3. We're halfway there.
No.
These are less complex, hopefully. So that's good news. All right. Another article focused on what drives employee motivation. Another article focused on what drives employee motivation suggests that all people are driven by 4 basic needs: the need to acquire, the need to bond, the need to comprehend, and the need to defend. In your life experience, can you think of an example where you felt the most engaged in all 4 needs and how that affected your motivation?
Well, I found this to be a very interesting question because I've never heard that perspective before, right? The whole acquire, bond, comprehend, and defend. Is that, explain to me a little bit more, if you can, from the reading, how they came up with that.
I would love to. So, granted, I read this one probably first, so I don't remember too much of it. But basically,
context around the 4 needs is really
the 4 needs. Let me tell you. So, essentially, this author and the other authors had done a lot of research, and basically they boiled it all down to these 4 overarching categories of what drives everyone's motivation. So, saying the need to acquire could be the need to acquire status or promotions or things of that sort, or information, just basic information. The need to bond, developing relationships, whether that's in work, outside of work, relationship, family, the whole 9 yard. And also to bond to actual experiences, right, outside of just relationships. The need to comprehend, to be able to synthesize, understand information and be able to grow with it. And defend, to be able to stand up and say, this is what I do, why I do what I do, and to have something to protect against. That was my understanding of it, at least. So I kind of feel like 4 essential human needs, and why that would make you motivated.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I mean, that's really kind of what we're,
yes,
where we're at, and I think we can all relate to that. So, specifically, I can think of 2 different. As you well know, everybody's already heard my babbling, right? I have two parallel careers, right? So, or I did for a good, 32 years of my professional life. So. I'm going to give you 2 separate quick examples. First on the military side, I think when, as I was pursuing, right, when I got back into the National Guard, it was because I was really missing something, the opportunity to bond, right? The camaraderie that comes with military service. Mm-hmm. There's just nothing else. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else that will replicate that. If you haven't experienced it, you don't know what it is. So that was a big missing piece, in my life that was very, very important. So I got back into that and then very much enjoyed it, but it kind of became, a little bit mundane, in all honesty. When I got back in, I was part of the Maryland Air National Guard, enjoyed the people, great opportunities. My gosh, we were doing crap all across the continent of Africa and Europe and whatnot. It was, really, really cool stuff. But I was basically a staff member. So almost an individual contributor, if you think of it that way. So I enjoyed what I was doing, but it was like, okay, I'm just kind of clicking the talk. I got to get my 20 years in. So when I hit 60, I'll get a paycheck and it'll all be good. And so I was ticking that clock towards there. And at about year, 18, 19 is when I got the opportunity to join the North Carolina National Guard. It was all specifically
thing where we went for your retirement, the Special Forces, where all arms of the military all work together.
Yeah, that was the National Guard headquarters. So for North Carolina. So that was actually when I first transferred to North Carolina. I was actually down in Charlotte. And it's where the Air Guard, the primary Air Guard base is. We had the aircraft and whatnot, right? So the headquarters here in Raleigh was the compilation of both the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard in North Carolina. That's where they come together.
Got it.
So anyway, fast forward piece was really when I had that opportunity. It really revitalized my interest, really, and kept me engaged because I was ready to, punch out at 20 years, call it a day. Hey, Lieutenant Colonel, it's all good. I'm going to have a good, it's going to be great, and let's move on. And I transferred to North Carolina to help stand up a new mission. So literally, I was pretty much given the reins by, the commanding general, said, here's your piece of paper. Here's your staffing. Go for it. Let me know what you need. And the long and the short of it was from day one. When we kind of stood up a new unit. It was me. It was just me. I'm like, okay, well, that's a fancy big flag waving ceremony. I got an email. Congratulations. Okay, I guess I got to get to work. So doing that while also maintaining a civilian career was, challenging, but there was nothing more rewarding, especially in that first 2 years, as I was really recruiting, right? I was connecting with anybody I could. I had to identify people. I had to build a team, and the edict was, again, post 9/11 world, right? I had to build a team and be ready to deploy the first team within 2 years. And was very, very proud that we were able to accomplish that, the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. So the fast forward piece. So that really hit, all four of those, the opportunity, honestly, to command, and that's what it was. I stopped being an individual producer that I really kind of was in the Maryland Guard, to where I was given the opportunity to command and build and really own it, right? I own this unit. I own the people, figuratively, right? I own the mission, I own the responsibility, to identify, recruit, train, develop, and get a team ready to go off, which we were obviously, able to do very successfully. So similarly on the civilian side, with all the things that I did, I enjoyed my time with consulting engineering, but I said, when I tapped out in 2011, I was just done. I just really was done. And the opportunity that I've been afforded over the last 9 years with Manpower Group has just been not the same as the military. Again, nothing is, but it's been great. It's been very, very similar. I was given the reins to go forth and build. I started, when I became a managing director in the company after about a year, like, okay, here's 12 people. I need you to, go forth and prosper here. We've built that to a team of over 40 people in 9 offices across the Eastern United States. So, growing that from basically, putting a handful of people to work in Raleigh, North Carolina to, servicing, literally hundreds of people and millions of dollars worth of business, and having the opportunity that I do in Manpower Group has been pretty similar. So I've got a military option and a civilian option. You can pick which.
I love it. And I thank you for giving the backstory of military too, because it makes sense. It makes sense that the need to bond is very strong. And I, being just military family and not actually having been in the military, I watch a lot of NCIS, but still, I understand that they foster bonding is huge. So it seemed to me like where you were just an individual in that group, you were being able to bond again, which is what you were looking for, but you kind of lacked the acquire piece, right? Because you were just working as yourself. Whereas the other two examples where you were, hey, here's your mission and build your team, very clearly you are working to acquire and comprehend and then of course defend what you've built. So perfect examples. Thank you so much. You ready for number 4?
Oh man, we're burning through this now.
We are just flying through. Okay, so continuing on the topic of motivation, Richard Ryan and Edward Deci, whatever, outline the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. Basically defined, intrinsic motivation is being motivated to do something inherently based on interest, and extrinsic motivation is being motivated to do something because of what results from that action. In your experience in the Air Force, can you give an example of when you experienced both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
Well, yes. Surprisingly, I think I can. Well, since you specifically ask, again, I could give you examples on both sides, but specifically in the Air Force, oddly enough, it was my time in Iraq. I think that's, obviously one of the toughest things I've ever done was, walk out that front door and, looking back at Aunt Shelley with, 3 kids standing in the doorway. And who knows, right? At the time, just really didn't know. And early in 2004, heading off to really, unknown. But, at that point, I was almost 20 years, in the military, and, fortunate, unfortunate, would call it what you want. But I mean, it's the first time that I'd really ever been called to serve. Right, to go into a war zone, whatnot. I was in grad school when the first Gulf War kicked off, and that came and went so dang fast, nobody even knew it happened, right? In hindsight. So, thinking back on pop service in World War II and all, you've read all those stories, right? So, and again, you were at my retirement ceremony, so you heard me, give all those stories. But I think that that time in Iraq was really what it was about. It was, certainly motivated because I understood the mission. I was the one. I raised my right hand and agreed to support and defend and serve when called, right? And so that was my call. We got there, and I guess the extrinsic, part of it was I was very fortunate. Again, I wouldn't trade, that deployment to Iraq for anything. I grew personally, professionally, in so many ways during that 10 months that it's that's a whole nother book. That's a 4-hour interview I won't bore you with. But I think what really mattered to me, I was fortunate as an engineer, right? We were providing the infrastructure, supporting our the whole joint service operations, NATO operations in the country. And so I wasn't out kicking down doors, right? In Baghdad, so I was very fortunate from that, perspective. Sure had the couple nail biters and convoying, across the country, and diving under tables when some missiles went off, that kind of thing. But by and large, I mean, I was very, very safe, very protective. I wasn't outside the wire every day, really, in harm's way. So I was very fortunate from that perspective. And what that enabled me to do, the real my answer to the extrinsic part of that was really getting to see and meet and interact with the Iraqi people. Again, perception. Again, you were much younger, but still kind of that. And you see anybody with a with a burqa on, you automatically freak out, right? And you don't appreciate what you don't understand. And what that enabled me, gave me the remarkable opportunity, to meet and work with some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people who honestly wanted the exact same things for their families and their kids that we want, right? You want to provide a better life, for your children, provide them opportunity, and whatnot. Just, very well-meaning, warm, warm people. Yes, culturally could not be more different, right? But that's okay. And I think somewhere in here there was a question about diversity, right? And that experience just gave me so much more appreciation for diversity, because you really realized, that boy, it really doesn't matter kind of, what you believe in, who you believe, whether you go right or you go left. At the end of the day, be comfortable in your own self and know that the diversity, diversity certainly makes us stronger. I think I'm bleeding into the next question.
No, that's perfect. Yes, you are bleeding into the next question, but
that's really that point, right? So that my Iraqi deployment was really, certainly was a call to mission. I didn't know what the hell to expect when I got on that airplane.
Right.
And, but boy, I knew, when I came back, what really mattered.
100%. And to your point, I really like that you used something that was both intrinsic and extrinsic, because so much of our readings have been like, oh, it's a clear deviation between the two. And I'm with you. I don't think it's a clear deviation. And a lot of times something that may be first extrinsic, you're doing it just because you have to, or for the results of what are going to come from that, in turn become intrinsic, because then all of a sudden what's happened you are truly interested in, and the next fold and what comes from that becomes inherently interesting, so therefore changing the way you look at things. So I love that. Thank you very much.
Well, the things, to your point, the things that truly add value in your personal and professional life are the things that will address both. We all have to do something. Yeah, I got to fill out spreadsheets and do crap that I really don't want to do because I have to do it. It's part of my job. Do I get great satisfaction out of it and personal? No, I really don't. But it is what it is. I think that's when you can find that those things that kind of bring them both together, is those are the things that are going to really provide you the personal, professional rewards in life.
Yes, I love it. Such a great choice. Okay, and the very last one. Here we go. This is actually from touching on baby boomers and the Gen X's. So here we go. In an article comparing the baby boomer leaders of today against the upcoming Gen X leaders of tomorrow, the author suggests that due to the environment that Gen X was raised in, that Gen X leaders will be more collaborative, more apt to ask compelling questions, more willing to engage with disruptive information, more invested in shaping a corporation's identity, and more appreciative of diversity. Considering this article was written 10 years ago, and that your team actively recruits for executive level talent, how would you agree or disagree with these claims?
Well, yes and no.
Okay, that's good. We can do that.
Some of it, I could put to, I already touched on the diversity thing, and I do think it is, as a boomer, I think we were really one of the first generation to start to figure out and value diversity, right? And I think it came late for me. It certainly came later in my professional life, right? And so I think, yes, from a Gen X, honestly, and I think it's really Gen Z, Gen Y, really, from my personal, opinion, that Gen X world is kind of a tweener, I think, from my perspective. But I think as we've, as a boomer, having, come up, you come to appreciate it later in life, right? And clearly, I won't turn into a political conversation, but clearly there's some, there's still a significant bastion of the United States population that does not believe, in, diversity, and the importance of that, right? And it's truly unfortunate, from my personal, perspective. And I think there's a lot of that is categorized in that, in the boomer, age, right? It's that, whatever, 60 to 75, and
Right.
and that's an interesting demographic right now in the U.S. So I think by and large I would have to agree, with the comment. But I think that there's hope for some of us boomers that have, the whole, wow, I get it. I know. Okay, now I get it. Right. So, I just keep kind of going back, because that's the military thing. You I mean, that was from day one, right? Diversity is huge, in the military. It always has been, right? Going going way back, right? That's a big, a big part. So
interesting though that you should say it like that, because earlier in the article before, it was like, I mean, and it did qualify all the claims that they said by basically saying like, that the Gen Xers were starting to complain about, oh, how the younger generations are just, oh, they just think they deserve everything and they just, are getting it. But then the baby boomers were reflecting, were like, well, we remember making those claims about you. So to me, it kind of seemed like all of these claims are applicable as to the generation of tomorrow, right? And especially considering it was 10 years ago, I think that there's even more of a shift. To your point, as you get older, the more you are understanding or more embracing of all of these things. I'm not quite sure where it just seems way more not this generation versus this generation, but actually like across all fronts. Does that make sense? Or was that far-fetched? Okay.
No, it does. I think, the one thing, the one word in there, I think that is interesting and kind of caught my attention right off the bat is collaborative. Right. And that's one that I'm real. If I'm going to disagree anywhere, that's where I'm going to disagree, to some of the things that you pointed out. I firmly, feel like the boomer population, like my world, I mean, it's very collaborative, right? We're very collaborative, and maybe not so much the Gen X, but as you move down the path, right? It's, the social media is a good thing, right? This opportunity for us to do this right now is great, but there's been that last, 5-10 years of really disconnected, right? We see it in schools. As I think, I'm very heavily, involved, with the STEM high school and STEM education in North Carolina, and it's interesting because that school is fundamentally based on project-based learning, and it's all collaborative. And so when I look at that, I'm engaged in that school and what the kids are doing, it's just awesome, compared to, honestly, the school that Brian, Drew, and Sarah went through, and probably not unlike what you went through, right? It's rows of desks, one in front of the other, side by side, and the classroom is the opportunity for the teacher to tell you information, right? As opposed to a very, very different environment today that is, okay, I'm not here to tell you anything. We're in the classroom to engage in learning. What did you learn from the reading? I think that's what you're dealing with right now, right? What did you learn from this? How are you engaged and how are you using that? So I'm really fast forwarding, there, but I think that's fundamentally kind of, it's a different environment from, the way I see. I already, mentioned earlier in the discussion here about all this stuff that I've been involved with corporate headquarters, right? Going up there, extremely collaborative. I'm meeting with, brand peers across, all of our brands, a lot of our geography, and we're talking about marketing, we're talking about finance, we're talking about HR, talking about all these different aspects that fundamentally impact our business, our company, and where we're going. No one is more important than the other. You can't get there without a collaborative, and collaborative discussion. And, oh, by the way, wrapping right back to, the diversity piece. It was interesting. The first meeting I went to, I'm sitting in there and I'm in a room, which was really pretty awesome. I'm in a room. You'd think if you kind of structured, this is a big Fortune, global company, Fortune 200 company at HQ, big old meeting. There's going to be a big room full of 20 people. Well, the 20 people, when we got there was 19. It was me and 18 women.
Wow, and, that's amazing.
And it was really pretty cool because I made the point. I'm like, okay, nobody can accuse us from not being, and again, looking around the room, even the different cultural, ethnic and cultural differences of the 18 women, and then there's the old gray-haired guy. I'm like, okay, gray-haired white guy, like
gotta have the token gray-haired guy, Uncle Mike.
Wow, okay, but it's awareness, right? I think I just say that. I mean, it was cool. It's great being a part of this group, and we've since added a couple other guys, but it was just interesting that it's really an awareness thing. It's not, I mean, the people in that room are in there for a reason, right? They're extremely intelligent. They're good at what they do. They're leaders in our company. But 10 years ago, that room would have looked very different than it did 30 days ago, and we wouldn't have even asked the question, right? Whereas now, I think that's really the diversity question is, it's noticed, right? It's noticed when it's, I got to do something about this, right? I mean, it can't just be, all, one demographic. It can't be all one gender. It can't be all one race, regardless of what that is. The strength is going to come from, diversity. So
interesting point about the collaborative nature. I want to touch on that real quick, just because, to your point, I've always been in traditional schooling. When I started this program, first of all, you always kind of expect online programs. Yikes, how is this going to work out? But nearly all the classes I've taken so far have been very group-based, especially this one right now. I mean, every single week we have at least one group project due.
Yeah.
And that at first was kind of barrier to entry because I'm so used to the traditional way of schooling, right? And you're responsible for yourself, which I do think translates and has translated into all generations. Again, I'm going back to where I think that it's not one generation versus the other, that it's pretty across all odds. Now, to that point, I would challenge you on the fact that I think that the collaborative nature of what our generations are capable of has a lot to do with what businesses we're in, right? I have always been in a very collaborative base. I lie. I've typically been in a collaboratively based company, with the exception of, well, no, CarMax would even be considered that too. Although I was selling cars for myself to earn a paycheck, only being responsible for the numbers I needed to make. At the same time, I know the total numbers still went towards the greater good. And then of course there were rewards back and forth for that. But I would say, do you think, especially in where you would think that, like, say, the military is a little bit more of a bureaucratic hierarchical structure, do you still think the same about collaboration as opposed to different generations given different corporations or organizations or whatever?
Yeah, no, I do. And if you were to interview any one of the the people on my team, from my managers down to every single person on my team, I've got a motto which obviously carries from the military, but it is so true in how we do what we do, because we're extremely diverse, geographically diverse across the Eastern United States. We got a lot of different skill sets, and we have to leverage each other to ultimately meet our business goals. And really, we're meeting our business goals by helping our clients meet their business goals, right? So my motto is one team, one fight, and it has never been more true than in the last 30 days, and I think will be even more so in the next 90, 180 days, as we've already seen it. And I've been able to just take my little motto from my my region, and we've been able to expand that across. And now I've got, my peers and other brands within Manpower Group reaching out. I've got people on my team who have capacity and are reaching across the aisle, to go help. I'm like, look, this is an all hands on deck situation. I don't care, right? I'm not really worried. Yes, I have my financial, right? I've got a P&L that I'm responsible for, and I'm hitting my numbers. But at the end of the day, what matters? The greater good. The greater good of what matters. So, that's just a personal mindset. I'm like, look, well, does this going to count? It's like, look, stop all that. Don't worry about that. One team, one fight. Go do. Our peers need your help. Go help. I'll make sure I'll take care of you. Right. Well, so I don't know how I got on that really. I think it's collaboration, right? I mean, that's right. One team, sure. It's all about collaboration. It is. And it just, we're not going to, we're just not going to get there. And my business is a perfect example, right? It's sales and delivery. Neither one is going to, make a plug nickel if they don't work together. right? You know,
Mhm.
every single person, every single dollar that, you know, my company earns, that my team earns, is based on somebody in sales identifying an opportunity, a client that needs our help, and a recruiter that has identified the talent resource that meets that need. And
Right.
when the two of them partner, then that person is engaged. They are both making money. Our clients win, and the company makes money. So it's not an individual. It's not an individual sport.
You're so right, and thank you for taking all of the themes and putting them back into one example. I
Well, there we
appreciate
go.
that. Thank you so much, Uncle Mike. I appreciate you taking all this time and chatting with me. And you know, if you are still watching after what I'm sure is like at least 30 minutes at this point, we thank you for watching along with us.
I don't know,
For
where's
another
where's the clock?
I
Is
don't
there a
think
clock
there's a
on it?
timer. I was just thinking. But
Okay.
thank you so much for watching us, and come back again soon.